This is the very first episode of Off the Cuff with Magus in the Media, a space where we peel back the surface of things to look at the myths behind the myths, the symbols hidden in plain sight, and the ancient ideas still echoing through the stories we tell today. Because if you know where to look, if you know the signs, you start to realize something that almost nothing in our culture, in our books, in our movies is ever as it claims to be. Beneath it all, there are old patterns, ancient blueprints, maps for how the soul can grow, how civilization rises and falls, how meaning survives even when memories fade. And so far, for this first conversation, I wanted to start a little close to the source with a work that captures the spirit of hidden architecture beautifully. Tonight, we're going to dive deep into The Lost Keys of Freemasonry by Manly P. Hall. The Lost Keys of Freemasonry is a book that he wrote in his early 20s, 21 or 22. The man was like a born genius in his own right. Even if he was connected to the right people, he still put all this information together for us, you and me. Manly P. Hall is somebody that I found in my early 20s. He helped change my life, kind of open my eyes to the wider journey of our soul, of our humanness. My first book by Manly P. Hall that I read was The Secret Teachings of All Ages. The Secret Teachings of All Ages was given to me, actually told to me by a gentleman that I was conversing with at a place that I worked in my early 20s. And he told me that I should go to Barnes and Noble and buy this book because it was something that he stumbled upon while he was there. And just from a brief conversation, he was all like, "This sounds like something right up your alley." And so I did just like anyone would do if they are seeking and searching for something that they don't understand. I went to Barnes and Noble, and there it was. I started reading it and started to understand that there were things in this story, in this book, that I had never thought of before. Even though I was on a spiritual journey, I was on a journey of discovery. These things were secret societies and mythologies and magical societies that had been through the ages. And what he was trying to do in those stories was he was trying to link this golden thread, so to speak, this adept ship through the ages that all myths, legends, and stories are trying to tell us. Thus, years later, almost 20 years later, I created Magus in the Media. Magus in the Media, as you can see right here, right? Whoop, whoop. And Magus in the Media is kind of like a passion project of mine that I really wanted to dive deep into because our world is and is constantly, will probably forever be going through great shifts and paradigms that will continually help us unfold what we are as humans and what human consciousness truly is. And so there are stories that we have being told to us through Hollywood and the like that, even if they don't mean to, which a lot of times they do, they are trying to elucidate something to us. A lot of the times, if we don't understand what is being done to us, it is basically like programming our nervous system with these symbols and signs. And so it is something that is really important that I find is that we then go to the sources of these things, these legend stories and fables, these myths through the ages. And that leads us back to Manly P. Hall. Manly P. Hall, with his Secret Teachings of All Ages book, it does this very similar thing to those who know about who Carl Jung is. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, um, went deeper than his predecessor, Freud. Freud, as we all know, the father of modern psychology, had a really deep understanding of the human psyche, but not so deep as to understand that things aren't all just sexual repression. But when you get past that part of the human psyche, we understand that is there's a wellspring of mystical and mythological images, symbols, and stories being told out. And so that leads us back to this book. Um, this book is The Lost Keys of Freemasonry, and it is something in some times, some of my really deep and my own hero's journey, right? Because all individuals go through their own hero's journey, hero or heroine. You must dig deep into these secret symbols of our psyche, or they will control you. Things happen to us that we don't understand. And so if we can start understanding these symbols, then we can understand why things happen to us and we can take control of those things. And so the book comes to be. I'm going to read a little bit of this book. I'm going to probably read the introduction and then the prologue. And if, things go well, I'll read also the first chapter. But every episode, we will continue on with the next part of the book until it's done. And then maybe we'll continue with more books. Yeah. So here we go. Manly P. Hall's The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. And the beginning, the introduction, it says, Freemasonry, though not a religion, is essentially religious. Most of its legends and allegories are of a sacred nature. Much of it is woven into the structure of Christianity. We have learned to consider our own religions as the only inspired ones, and this probably accounts for much of the misunderstanding in the world today concerning the place occupied by Freemasonry and the spiritual ethics of our race. A religion is a divinely inspired code of morals. A religious person is one inspired to nobler living by this code. He's identified by the code, which is his source of illumination. Thus, we may say that a Christian is one who receives his spiritual ideals of right and wrong from the messages of Christ, while the Buddhist is one who molds his life into the archetypes of morality given by the great Gautama, or one of the other Buddhas. All doctrines which seek to unfold and preserve the invisible spark in man named spirit are said to be spiritual. Those which ignore this invisible element and concentrate entirely upon the visible are said to be material. There is in religion a wonderful point of balance, where the materialist and spiritist meet on the plane of logic and reason. Science and theology are two ends of a single truth, but the world will never receive the full benefits of their investigation until they have made peace with one another and labor hand in hand for the accomplishment of the great work, the liberation of spirit and intelligence from the three-dimensional prison house of ignorance, superstition, and fear. I think that this beginning of this really is coming to show us that right where we're at in our day and age, where we have two opposing factors. These two opposing factors is the materialist point of view, and the other one is the spiritual point of view, or the idealist point of view, or the religious point of view. And once long ago, that these things actually weren't so separate; they were combined. The mystical teachings, the religious teachings, and the scientific teachings. These things are very important to our society. And I think that is why we can see that society itself is crumbling. Is it always crumbling? I think it waxes and wanes. We go through periods of growth and periods of dissolution. The alchemical journey that we go as individuals is one that isn't just done on the individual plane, but done on the societal plane, is done in cultures. And so these myths that we hear of apocalypse, Armageddon, the great floods, these are written down as legends because they are stories to help us remember of these things that we have done, that we have gone through on a whole as a society, as a civilization, as humans on Earth, and also what we go through on a day-to-day basis. Our day-to-day basis is fraught with things that happen that seem to be out of our control. But since we cannot see the forest from the trees, we don't really see the importance of these happenings or these experiences. And so we continue on. That which gives man a knowledge of himself can be inspired only by the self, and God is the self in all things. In truth, he is the inspiration and the thing inspired. It has been stated in scriptures that God was the Word and that that Word was made flesh. Man's task now is to make flesh reflect the glory of that Word, which is within the soul of himself. It is this task which has created the need of religion, not one faith alone, but many creeds, each searching in its own way, each meeting the needs of individual people, each emphasizing one point above all others. 12 fellow craftsmen are exploring the 4 points of the compass, are now Are not these 12 the 12 great world religions, each seeking in its own way for that which was lost in the ages past, and the quest of which is the birthright of man? Is it not the quest for reality in a world of illusion, the task for which each comes into the world? We are here to gain balance in a sphere of unbalance, to find rest in a restless thing, to unveil illusions and to slay the dragon of our own animal natures. As David, king of Israel, gave to the hands of his son Solomon the task he could not accomplish, so each generation gives to the next work the work of building the temple, or rather rebuilding the dwelling of the Lord, which is on Mount Moriah. So then it begs the question, is the temple of Solomon, or is these things that they speak of, this rebuilding of the temple, what is that? What does that mean? To me, and to those who see things similarly to I, would see that as an analogy or a metaphor. So the real temple, it could be real. There seems to be a lot of data that explores that says it was, but to me, it doesn't matter. It is as real in the ideal spheres. It is real to my mind, and it is real in stories. And these stories have lived for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. So technically, me being the age I am, it has lived those that realness has lived longer than I. And so that leads us to what, again, Magus and the media is all about, and those who also are exploring storytelling. Rebuilding the temple, what does that mean in our modern myths? Well, in our modern myths, we have stories like the Wheel of Time and Dune. We have stories like Solo Leveling. We have stories like Demon Slayer and Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood. What these tell to me is that the rebuilding of the temple is the rebuilding of man himself. As Carl Jung states, we go on this path of individuation, and this path to be true is one where we must destroy and put into the fire to cleanse out the mind, to cleanse my body so it can be ripe for divine energy, for God to incarnate, or to God to be invoked into my being. This would be what we call magic, right? Ceremonial magicians or theurgists, those of the religious spheres, want to call forth divine into their being and be embodied with that. Thus, to be able to make the vessel have the ability to have the divine energy move into it, what must it do? It must cleanse itself, and it must prepare the vessel for these higher energies. And this may sound at times very woo-woo, but actually it has much reality in the religious spheres, in the spheres of media, in the spheres of our athletes, in the spheres of these people who are trying to make themselves better. Just to pause here for a moment because we are live. And so I just want to make sure we are still live. It looks like we are still live. Great. Yes. Thank you, Kaiva. All right. Back at it. So, Manly P. Hall talks about in here, right? Let's get back to what we were talking about. So each generation gives to the next the work of building the temple, or rather rebuilding the dwelling of the Lord, which is on Mount Moriah. It doesn't matter about Mount Moriah or the dwelling of the Lord. What I think really matters is kind of like a video that I just did, and I'm going to plug that video, the Adept's Path, or the Path of the Adept. And what I'm talking about in there is definitely stuff that I've gotten from Manly P. Hall, Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, these names throughout the ages, as well as other occultists, esotericists, and mentors of mine, even if they're mentors on a different space, right, in the mental realms, in the book realms, is that these adepts, the hermit, the hierophant, and the high priestess, the magician and the hero, these are unconscious archetypes moving through our stories to help tell each individual consciousness how to live the path of the hero, of making the philosopher's stone, which isn't, of my understanding, a true stone. I mean, maybe you can, right? Maybe we have these abilities to actually, in time, create a philosopher's stone. I think that that is real. However, I don't think that's the important part of that. What's important is to be the best human being, being the best individual that you can be. And it goes back to these characters that I've read and I love in all of storytelling, right? So, all free nerds out there, Tanjiro from Demon Slayer, or Edward Elric from Fullmetal Alchemist, or even Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen. All these characters worked really hard to build themselves, even if they already had strength, or they didn't have strength and they went through training. That training was the initiations of life and things being thrown at them. In these stories, it is demons and bad guys and like literal creatures that are trying to destroy them or do something to them. But in our life, we see it as our day-to-day experiences in relationships and in the world, that things that seem like chance, and it's how we move past them and how we learn from them and how we burn that karma to build ourselves up to be better, right? So let's continue. Truth is not lost, yet it must be sought for and found. Reality is ever present, dimensionless, yet all prevailing. Man, creature of attitudes and desires and servants of impressions and opinions, cannot, with the wavering unbalance of an untutored mind, learn to know that which he himself does not possess. As man attains a quality, he discovers that quality and recognizes about him the thing newborn within himself. Man is born with eyes, yet only after long years of sorrow does he learn to see clearly and in harmony with the plan. Now let's repeat that. Man is born with eyes, yet only after long years of sorrow does he learn to see clearly and in harmony with the plan. To me, that seems like exactly what we're just talking about. We are born with eyes, and yet we cannot see clearly. But yet, with long years of sorrow, does he learn to see clearly and in harmony with the plan. I repeated that multiple times. Why? Because it it is showing us that life isn't perfect, and that what the new age spiritually materialized individuals are doing is that they're not understanding, that they're pushing away their sorrows instead of letting those sorrows help give us upgrades, how let these sorrows help learn us about how to not do these things more, to how to move around and then or move through these things, that we must, no matter what happens, right? Like a bum ankle or hardship through trials and tribulations of government or our parents or whatever it is, that these things we must sit and listen, breathe, and just move through it. And a lot of that time, what he was talking about in the beginning was that we do that through dedication. We do that through being able to understand and have faith. And it's not some seemingly endless faith that I must have for something that I cannot see, but have faith that what we're going through actually means something, that there's a plan. Then let's continue. I agree too. He is born with senses, but only after long experience and fruitless strivings does he bring these senses to the temple and lays them as offerings upon the altar of the great Father, who alone does all things well and with understanding. Man is, in truth, born in the sin of ignorance, but with capacity for understanding. He has a mind capable of wisdom, a heart capable of feeling, and a hand strong for the great work in life, truing the rough ashlar into the perfect stone. What this can mean to us is basically just what he says, that we have the capability of true wisdom and true kindness, and to be physically strong, to be able to move through the world and do the great work. The great work, meaning or is the great work is the magnum opus, right, of the alchemists, or the great work of the ceremonial magicians, or to gain the philosopher's stone, right? These things take time and pressure, and in pressure we gain experience. And again, Magus in the media. What media am I talking about? Video games? Yes. I'm talking about anime? Yes. Movies, film, literature. They all tell a story, even if it's bad, about a person who goes through something and comes out the other side. Now, Shakespeare did it best, where he made, uh, the divine comedies, right? Tragedy and the comedy and tragedy trope, right? Divine comedy obviously was Dante, but similar. But with Shakespeare, we understood that it was a tragedy and a comedy all at once. Why? Because life is just that. That things are funny and things are sad. Robert Anton Wilson called it the cosmic laughter, right? The cosmic joke and the cosmic suffering, right? This Buddhistic understanding that all life is suffering. Yet we can worship under that of Hilarion, Robert Anton Wilson said. Hilarion being the god of hilarity, or the god of that cosmic joke, understanding that these two things balance themselves. And in that balance, we find the Tao, right? The wheel of time, as we are understanding in our pop culture today. And what do? They have friends going on a journey, understanding that each one of those people has a certain kind of power within themselves, right? The ability to channel the one source. This one source comes from this thing that we can all feel, and some people have the ability to channel it and others do not. That the part about others do not is only true insofar as it's in a story. So you need to have that understanding that somebody can be special. But in our real life experience, I think that everyone has the ability to channel the one power. And that is exactly what Manly P. Hall in this is talking about. That it's not that you are special that gives you the ability to go through things, but it is that you have the seeking for something outside of yourself. That you understand that to move through reality, that I must have true of heart, true of mind, and true of body. And so we must go through certain initiations, right? And first we must prepare the vessel for these initiations. These preparing of the vessels are what we would call in our Eastern mysticism, right? The yoga, the 8 limbs of yoga, right? The first 2 limbs of yoga are our ability to have both ethics and morals, yama and niyama. These things are what are our base principles. In Greek philosophy, we would call them virtues, right? These virtues for human nature are things that no matter what, we will stand upon. Sometimes we're born with these virtues and we just know, and other times life and karma come through and we must build these virtues. But everyone knows that these virtues are there. Even if you don't, I think there are inklings of these things. And again, I think that's what storytelling is all about. They are to tell us that the hero goes through the journey and that he, even if he dies, can be reborn into something new. That in the end, no matter if the villain still has power, it's not true power. Because true power, what you learn in Fullmetal Alchemist, true power is having the ability to have friends and family and a heart that is, as they say, made full metal. The heart that is can move mountains. The heart that can move us through all great suffering. Let us continue. What more can any creature ask than the opportunity to prove the thing he is, the dream that inspires him, the vision that leads him on? We have no right to ask for wisdom. In whose name do we beg for understanding? By what authority do we demand happiness? None of these things is the birthright of any creature. Yet all may have them, if they will cultivate within themselves the thing that they desire. There is no need of asking, nor does any deity bow down to give man these things that he desires. Man is given by nature a gift, and that gift is the privilege of labor. Through labor, he learns all things. Through labor, he learns all things. And what is that labor? It's just like what we were talking about. That labor is our day to day experiences, the things that we must do, even if we don't want to. I must move through my life and I must do it well, right? And so, not everybody feels that way. But the idea is that it doesn't matter if you feel that way, that we have been given a gift, and that gift is the privilege of labor. That is a true privilege. That we were born, no matter through what or or what we have been given, those things that we have been given are part of our plan. And then through that plan, we have a gift, and that gift is the privilege of labor. I think that gift is actually being able to channel the one power, no matter who you are, right? That gift is be able to be a character like Tandro in Demon Slayer. I want, for those who do not know, Tandro in Demon Slayer, he's the main character, Demon Slayer's an anime. That main character, Tandro, had his whole family be annihilated and killed by demons. He was off doing a good deed, as a lot of main characters do. And in that good deed, he in that deed was going down and giving charcoal to the local village. His family lived up in the middle of the mountains, and so he goes down there and to give the charcoal to the people, right? To be able to feed the people so they could feed themselves, right? He's just a normal kid, and they're like, "Don't go back up to your parents' house yet. It's nighttime because in this universe there are demons who roam about, and those demons want to kill normal people." And so he's like, "Okay, I really want to go back. I miss my family already. It's only been a few hours, but I guess I'll stay because I stayed late." Right? Don't we all do that? We talk a little bit too long at gatherings, and then all of a sudden it's nighttime. We're like, "Oh God, we have to make it back." In this instance, he doesn't make it back. He sleeps. He wakes up the next morning, and he on his way back, he sees trails of blood, and he realizes that his family is gone. They are there, dead, killed by a demon. And yet his sister is somewhere else. She's outside. His sister is still alive, but struggling. She is turned into a demon. So I might be wrong. She may have not have been alive, but she came back to life. In this world, I do believe that she was turned into a demon, and the story goes on farther that she was turned into a demon by the only person that could be a demon. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He then, through that, realizes he must save his sister. And in saving his sister, he must go on this journey. And going on this journey, what does he do? He faces many demons and he comes across many magical individuals. These magical individuals not only have the ability to swing a sword very fancily and very sharply, but have the ability to do it with certain powers, breathing powers. What are these breathing powers? These breathing powers are what we would call, right, breath work in modern meditation, breath work in ancient yoga or mystical practices. We must use our breath, right, in Tai Chi and Qigong, in these Eastern mystical practices. We must use our breath to be able to stoke the fire within. And by stoking the fire within, we can emblazon our heart. And in emblazoning our heart, we can move with wisdom and true will. And in doing so, we are moving forward just like here. Tanjiro was given a gift, and that gift was that he had a heart already. He had the ability to see beauty in all things. And even in his sister, who was turned to demon, he must pick her up and try to find the cure that will turn her back into being human. And in doing so, he goes on a path of individuation. He levels himself up. He becomes a Hashira. Hashira is a term which means pillar. To be a pillar, he becomes not just a normal demon slayer, but he becomes one of the greatest demon slayers of all time. Let us move on. Religions are groups of people gathered together in the labor of learning. The world is a school. We are here to learn, and our presence here proves our need of instruction. Every living creature is struggling to break the strangling of bonds of limitations, that pressing narrowness which inhibits vision and leaves the life without an ideal. Every soul is engaged in a great work, the labor of personal liberation from the state of ignorance. The world is a great prison. Its bars are the unknown. And each is a prisoner until at last he earns the right to tear these bars from their moldering sockets and pass illuminated and inspired into the darkness, which becomes lighted by that presence. Just a little stop there. Read that again. The world is a great prison. Its bars are the unknown. If the world is a great prison, like the Gnostics think, that prison is the world, but that prison is just another place within a place, because before that, he stated the world is a school. And then he says the world is a great prison, its bars are unknown, and each is a prisoner until at last he earns the right to tear down these bars from their moldering sockets and pass illuminated and inspired into the darkness, which becomes lighted by that presence. That part, and inspired into the darkness, which becomes lighted by that presence. When the Gnostics say the world is a great prison, it can be seen as an allegory. There are many Gnostic theories, and there's many Gnostic sects, right? Lots of them, Sethians and the like. But the idea is not to get stuck in the idea of Gnosticism being a great prison, because Gnosticism comes from the term gnosis, and gnosis means direct experience of the divine. And I think this is what is very important, is that life can be a great prison and a great school. And a lot of times these things are intermixed. Sometimes the institution carries on too much, and we forget that the bars are even there, as it says. But in doing so, we must have bars so we can understand that the bars can be tore down. And it doesn't need to be tore down as in lighting the world on fire, but maybe you need to light your own world on fire, metaphorically, analogically, and mythologically. And in lighting your own world on fire, you can find who you truly are. You can be that main character in your own story, in your own anime. And what that means is to truly make yourself into the person that you want to be, right? It's interesting that it says going into the darkness, inspired into the darkness. This is as we all on the seeking path understand that we go into the great darkness, meaning those dark times, the times of suffering, but also in the good times, right? The darkness, some think, is all around us at all times, and we are the light moving through the darkness. Tanjiro is the light moving through the world, trying to save his sister, right? Edward Elric, who, and with his brother, did the ultimate taboo in the alchemical world of Full Metal. They created the human transmutation where they tried to bring their mother back. That is darkness. They saw truth, bare bones, and lost and sacrificed limbs and body. Al lost his best friend and had to bring him back using his own blood. These things are dark things. Yet in doing those things, he then went on a path of individuation like Tanjiro. Edward Elric promised his brother that they would get their bodies back. And some think that these are just dumb stories, but they're really not. They're telling this thing that even though we all go through, we don't see it like that. And we don't see it like that because of life in this world is different. Its time is different. Like, you get a lot of downtime, unless, even when you're playing the game of trying to get ahead and be successful, like, you never truly get out of your own mind. And in your own mind, there are lots of times where you're just there. And there isn't one big bad demon on the outside or a bad guy or any true suffering going on, but the suffering is all up here. We create and make demons out of nothing. So we have something to battle, because in battling those outward demons, that means we don't truly have to battle the demons within. And that's what this book is all about, is helping you understand that you can battle those demons within so you can walk the true path, which is the path of the individual, the path of the human soul unfolding itself, trying to bring itself back to source. All people seek the temple where God dwells, where the spirit of the great truth illuminates the shadows of human ignorance, but they know not which way to turn nor where this temple is. The mist of dogma surrounds them. Ages of thoughtlessness bind them in. Limitations weakens them and retards their footsteps. They wander in darkness seeking light, failing to realize that the light is in the heart of darkness. I'm going to butcher this, but Carl Jung said that you must go to the place that you're least likely to look. That there is where the gold lies. So a lot of the times we turn away from everything that will actually get us ahead. Stop and do the hard things. Look in the place that you're putting away. Do the things like maybe not so much slay the dragon. I get the myth and I get the metaphor. I agree with the myth and the metaphor, but at the same time, they never talk about a lot. They do sometimes in the good stories. You don't have to slay the dragon. You can make the dragon your friend, right? And you can then understand that you are the dragon, right? In the Wheel of Time, they call it the dragon reborn, not because he slays the dragon, but he slays that part of himself. Exactly. Face your own shadow. Thank you, Wild Sea. I agree. Carl Jung talks about facing your own dragon, right? Facing your own shadow. Do the unconscious work. And in doing these things, the dragon reborn in the Wheel of Time, he truly must face his own dragon, because not only is he facing his own dragon, but he's facing the dragon of all men everywhere, right? all men and women everywhere. But truly in the Wheel of Time, it's all men everywhere, because as he was facing off against the Dark Lord, right, the big bad guy, as the Dragon Reborn, Lutheran was defeating him, put a curse on all of male channeling. And so anytime a male channels, they all go mad. And so I think that's a great metaphor for understanding your own madness, right? Because there is a fine line between the mystic and the madman. And I think that fine line the mystic understands is that once we face our own darkness and walk with it and befriend our darkness, right? Not let it control us, then we can truly balance the powers, the one power, right? We balance the powers within, which are the powers without. So let us continue. Exactly. Integration. To the few who have found him, God is revealed. These in turn reveal him to man, striving to tell ignorance the message of wisdom. But seldom does man understand the mystery that has been unveiled. He tries weakly to follow in the steps of those who have attained, but all too often finds the path more difficult than he even dreamed. So he kneels in prayer before the mountain he cannot climb, from whose top gleams the light which he is neither strong enough to reach nor wise enough to comprehend. He lives the law as he knows it, always fearing in his heart that he has not read aright the flaming letters in the sky, and that in living the letter of the law he has murdered the spirit. Man bows humbly to the unknown, peopling the shadows of own ignorance with saints and saviors, ghosts and specters, gods and demons. Ignoring fears all things. Ignorance fears all things. Falling, terror stricken before the passing wind, superstition stands in the monument to ignorance, and before it kneel all who realize their own weakness, who see in all things the strength they do not possess, who give to sickness and who give to sticks and stones the power to bruise them, who change the beauties of nature into the dwelling place of ghouls and ogres. Wisdom fears no thing, but still bows humbly to its own source. While superstition hates all things, wisdom, with its deeper understanding, loves all things, for it has seen the beauty, the tenderness, and the sweetness which underlies life's mysteries. So, upon that, I think that paragraph or that line really embodies the idea of the Jedi and the Sith, right? That the Jedi, before they became too institutionalized, before they became more than just peaceful monks that were looking after the common good of all, that the Sith embody those very things. You can tell that in all of literature, in all storytelling, is that there are two sides of the tree, right? In the tree of life, in the Kabbalah, that there is a left-hand path and there's a right-hand path. And that I don't know or think that it's as black and white as that, because in great stories and in not so great stories, in great stories, what I mean is that sometimes you don't know who the bad guy is, because at any moment you can become the bad guy without even knowing it. And the reason I had a little stoppage there and thinking that is because of that's the difference between J.R. Tolkien and Frank Herbert, two great writers, two of the most amazing writers of all time, telling the most archetypal stories that we've ever heard. J.R. Tolkien didn't like Frank Herbert. I've said this in a past video. Why didn't he like him? Well, because he didn't like the story where the bad guy or where the good guy is also the bad guy, where the good guy does bad things. And in Tolkien, again, more of a religious man, Catholic, Christian, he saw that the light was always facing off against the dark, and the good guys, even if they went into the dark pit of Mordor, they chose the right thing at all times. Even if they crept the line of doing the bad, they still chose the light. Dune and Frank Herbert, it was completely different, right? The story of Paul Muad'Dib, of Paul Atreides, is a very complicated one, because it seemed that he was chosen before he even had the ability to make the decision if he should do what the universe was pushing him to do, and that was to follow the golden path, right? And that leads us to these other ideas that I love talking about, and that has to do with the Bene Gesserit, the witches, right? These witches, which the term witches, not that great a term, sorceresses, you know, these witches, sorceresses, mystics, actually, this secret society, this more than secret society, this magical society of women who had the ability to take bloodlines and intermix them through a very long period of time. Why would they have the ability to do that? Because they had a school, because they had purpose. And in this purpose, they were trying to create the Keyswatch Heteroc. This Keyswatch Heteroc was the perfect fulfillment of the human capability to move consciousness through time. This person was the Adam Kadmon of the Kabbalists. This person was could maybe be the Philosopher's Stone, right? This man or a woman who could move mountains and worlds and truly bring the world back into order. The order actually being they wanted to be was their purpose, right? The many Gesserit had a plan, and that was they kept themselves in the shadows, moving kings and governors and lords and heroes through time. And so then you get Paul. Paul was trained by his mother, Jessica, and he was trained by his father, who's Baron, not Baron. His father was the leader of the Atreides, and now the owner and rightful hire of Dune, right? Of Arrakis. Arrakis has a lot of undertones, right? This is one of those things. What did Paul inherit? And Paul inherited the world that moved the universe through time and space itself, spice. Not only that, it was a drug that gave humans prescience, those beautiful blue shades, completely, not just blue retinas, but completely blue eyes. Um, Gaining prescience. Paul being trained in the Bene Gesserit way, in the way of magic and mysticism, as the occultists would state, uh, that gave Paul the ability to see the golden path, this thread that Manly P. Hall talks about through time, that the adepts were moving through. He had the memories of all man at all times. And in doing so, he saw this thing that no one else did. He saw the future, not just one, but the many different possible futures. And in doing so, he thought that he didn't think, but the universe had a path for him to move through. And that was the great jihad, right? To unite the world together on this one path. It didn't work out for him, obviously. It didn't work out for his son very well either. But that is to go back into the idea of the right and left-handed path, or that of great good and great evil, is what I'm trying to say is that there was Tolkien of the black and white and Frank Herbert of the grays. Don't trust a charismatic leader, right? This thing we can take into our day and age today. Don't trust charismatic leaders. It's as easy as that. What do? Become your own leader. Build your own path. Build your own world. And in doing so, you can make the best of yourself and give your family a home and give your friends and a community. And in doing so, you can build up more and more of that. So let's move on. Off topic. This seems to be right. Man is climbing an endless flight of steps with eyes fixed upon the goal. Oh, no, let's move. Skip the spot. Here we go. Delete that. Life is the span of time appointed for accomplishment. Every fleeting moment is an opportunity, and those who are great are the ones who have recognized life as the opportunity for all things. Arts, sciences, and religions are monuments standing for what humanity has already accomplished. They stand as memorials to the unfolding mind of man, and through them, man acquires more efficient and more intelligent methods of attaining prescribed results. Blessed are those who can profit by the experiences of others, who, adding to that which has already been built, can make their inspiration real, their dreams practical. Those who give man the things he needs, while seldom appreciate in their own age, are later recognized as the saviors of the human race. Masonry is a structure built upon experience. Each stone is a sequential step in the unfolding of intelligence. The shrines of Masonry are ornamented by the jewels of 1,000 ages. Its rituals ring with the words of enlightened seers and illuminated sages. 100 religions have brought their gifts of wisdom to its altars. Arts and sciences unnumbered have contributed to its symbolism. It is more than a faith, it is a path of certainty. It is more than a belief, it is a fact. Masonry is a university, teaching the liberal arts and sciences of the soul to all who will attend to its words. It is a shadow of the great Atlantean mystery school, which stood with all its splendor in the ancient cities of the Golden Gates. Where now the turbulent Atlantic rolls in unbroken sweep, its chairs are seated of learning, its pillars uphold the arch of universal education, not only in material things, but also in those qualities which are of the spirit. Upon its trestle boards are inscribed the sacred truths of all nations and of all people. Upon those who understand its sacred depths has dawned the great reality. Masonry is, in truth, the long lost thing which all people have sought in all ages. Masonry is the common denominator as well as the common divisor of human aspiration. Most of the religions of the world are like processes, or are like processions. One leads and the many follow. In the footsteps of the demigod, man follows in his search for truth and illumination. The Christian follows the gentle Nazarene upon the winding slopes of Calvary. The Buddhists follow his great emancipator through his wanderings in the wilderness. The Mohammedan makes his pilgrimage across the desert sands to the black tent at Mecca. Truth leads and ignorance follows in his train. Spirit blazes the trail and matter follows behind. In the world today, ideals live but a moment in their purity before the gathering hosts of darkness snuff out the gleaming spark. The mystery school, however, remains unmoved. It does not bring its light to man. Man must bring his light to it. Ideals coming into the world become idols within a few short hours. But man entering the gates of the sanctuary changed the idol back to an ideal. That is beautiful. That is something that really, the saying is, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I think that is a very apt saying for what is being said here. The mystery school, however, remains unmoved. It does not bring its light to man. Man must bring his light to it. Ideals coming into the world become idols within a few short hours, but man entering the gates of the sanctuary changes the idol back to an ideal. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't actually know. I only have suspicions. I have suspicions because many claim that they have seen the great light of the Lord, right? Or that they've had such crazy psychedelic experiences, or that they had some near death thing happen, or they've seen the paranormal, or I know a great truth, the earth must be flat, right? I think that it's all hogwash. I think that because of what he's saying right here. I've read this before, and every time my spine tingles. That to me, my spine tingling is spine tingling truth, and that the invisible college or the great mystery school of life or the realm, the great realm where truth true happens, I think that happens to you when you're ready. And at times we bring ourselves up to a ready position before we're ready, right? Taking a little too much psychedelic, a little too much hopium, a little too much spiritual, a little too much light, can burn us out if we're not ready, which is why you have an initiation mystery school lineage, why the great work was taken up when you are ready, when you choose, and then you must put the body through training. But people forget that it's not just the body that needs training, the mind needs training. And in doing that, that is the eight limbs of, I will go back to the eight limbs of yoga because it's the easiest reference, is that you must have an ethical and a moral structure. And then from there, you learn your asanas. You put the body through such immense pain that no thing, mind or earthliness, can impede upon your stillness. And then from having such stillness, you move into the ability to control breath, right? Pranayama or breath work, right? To be able to breathe on command. In Tai Chi and Qigong practices and your Kung Fu practices, you control the Dantian and you move the breath with movement and visualization. So from pranayama, you have chanting and mantra, and you make the mind still, which then all these things give you the ability to have single pointed focus. And that single pointed focus is what you need to be able to make your will manifest. And upon those things, these are what, through initiation and training, you can become the Keyswatch Heteroc, or the Adam Katamon, or the Tanjiro, or the Gojo, or Edward Elric, fill in the blanks, right? Sung Jin Woo, can you truly become the player and break the system? But learning that we must not break the system as in burning down buildings and ruining people's lives, but break the system of the mind, that mind control that we've all been put through time. Don't be mind controlled into thinking that Masonry is a bunch of evil dudes trying to change the world for their own evil. I got fucking, you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy that we think these stupid things. Don't get me wrong. All societies have infiltration and bad people doing crazy things, right? They form their little groups and they move themselves through, and then they try to be the Illuminati, right? The great Illuminati. But truly, like, Freemasonry has had a long lineage, an adeptship from the Templar, from the Gnostics, and the early Christians, and the many different religions, these little mystery cults, all the way back to Pythagoras. And as he's saying here, the Atlantean mysteries, right? These things are important because we are getting lost in the loop of X, right? Formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram, and any person who can grab a microphone, grabbing one, right? That we can grab a microphone and listen to, and we can blame somebody, right? Let's blame the Freemasons. Let's blame the Christians. Let's blame all these people, right? But you don't have, technically, we should probably only blame ourselves. And we truly know when evil people do evil things. We're seeing it in our world today, right? I don't even have to say the names, and you people know exactly who I'm talking about. And maybe you don't. Maybe that's part of the mystery, right? But to go back into what we're talking about, or this, oh, where am I at? This book right here. It's The Invisibles by Grant Morrison. Wait, what's it teaching us? The Invisibles by Grant Morrison, Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen. What is it doing? We're trying to train the human individual into being the best that they can be, so that when they are ready, that these teachings will come to them. What happens if they come to you too early? That's when you become Sith-like. That's when you become an egotist or a psychopomp. That's when you become a demagogue, right? Trying to take over the world. Well, in the end, the world isn't even there, right? Who knows if any of this is real, right? I think it's real. I've stubbed my toe. I've hurt my ankle. Here we are. Like, it has consequence. But what I'm meaning is all the power that you gain in trying to ruin other people's lives for your own gain is only going to bring you ruin in the end. Because in the end, when you walk through the holy gates of Amenti, of the holy gates of Osiris, and you come face to face with Anubis, and the great Mot is holding the scales, and you weigh your heart against that of a feather, will you pass on into the halls? Or will you have to be stuck forever floating in the halls of the abyss? I don't know. We all just do what we can. Man is climbing an endless flight of steps with his eyes fixed upon the goal at the top. Many cannot see the goal, and only one or two steps are visible before them. He has learned, however, one great lesson, namely that as he builds his own character, he is given strength to climb the steps. Hence, a Mason is a builder of the temple of character. He is the architect of a sublime mystery, the gleaming, glowing temple of his own soul. He realizes that he best serves God when he joins with the great architecture, when he joins with the great architect in building more noble structures in the universe below. All who are attempting to attain mastery through constructive efforts are Masons at heart. Regardless of religious sect or belief, a Mason is not necessarily a member of a lodge. In a broad sense, he is any person who daily tries to live the Masonic life and to serve intelligently the needs of the great architect. The Masonic brother pledges himself to assist all other temple builders in whatever extremity of life, and in doing so, he pledges himself to every living thing, for they are all Templar builders, building more noble structures to the glory of the universal God. The true Masonic lodge is a mystery school, a place where candidates are taken out of the follies and foibles of the world and instructed in the mysteries of life, relationships, and the identity of that germ of spiritual essence. Within, which is, in truth, the Son of God. Beloved of his Father, the Mason views life seriously, realizing that every wasted moment is a lost opportunity, and that omnipotence is gained only through earnestness and endeavor. Above all other relationships, he recognizes the universal brotherhood of every living thing. The symbol of the clasped hands, explained in the lodge, reflects his attitude towards all the world, for he is in the comrade of all created things. He realizes also that his spirit is glowing, gleaming jewel, which he must enshrine within a holy temple, built by the labor of his hands, the meditation of his heart, and the aspiration of his soul. Freemasonry is a philosophy which is essentially creedless. It is the truer for it. Its brothers bow to truth regardless of the bearer. They serve light instead of wrangling over the ones who bring it. In this way, they prove that they are seeking to know better the will and the dictates of the Invincible One. No truer religion exists than that of world comradeship and brotherhood. For if the purpose of the glory glorifying one God and building for him a temple of constructive attitude and noble character. So ends the introduction. The great mystery school of Freemasonry, the great mystery school of the Illuminati, the great mystery school of the Atlantean sect, the great mystery school of all great creeds and religions. For there is only but one. And it isn't that it is Christianity or Islam or, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, Mithraism, Buddhism. Some seem to be better than others for the path to be taken, right? Some seem to have a little more hardship. Some have much more been institutionalized. But as we learn in the introduction just now, it doesn't mean you have to go to a building, a courthouse, an old room, and become a Freemason. Because the Freemason is the man who lives a certain kind of life, who builds himself in a certain kind of way to be able to be the best person that he can be. And that leads us back to, what is Magus in the media? Well, Magus in the media is me exploring things that we all watch, see, hear, listen, and follow. A lot of the times we take symbols and we flop them around like they're nothing, but really they have meaning. And you may or may not know what this meaning is. Most of the time you don't. Even I am just a normal person. I've studied these things for a long time and practiced these things for a long time, and yet these symbols unfold to me all the time. The thing that I think about is in Naruto. Naruto Shippuden actually is where we learn it, that the great family of the Uchihas have the ability to gain the Sharingan, which is an eye ability. That the Uchihas, through great strife and terrible action, right? They didn't mean to, but they lived in a time of great wars, that families went up against families and villages against villages. But the Uchiha have this thing that happens inside their brains, inside their bodies, that when they go through such suffering and witness such suffering, it secretes a chemical and unleashes a certain eye ability. The Sharingan sees all things and does all things. It creates genjutsus or hallucinations that people can go through. It has the ability to witness things that are so fast in such a slow way so they can then go ahead and copy them. It also has many other abilities. One of the one that I'm talking about here is that it gives them the ability to read between the lines. And that's what in magazine media I really want us to be doing, is I want us to be reading between the lines. That these great narratives and these great books are trying to tell us something. The Uchiha have a great stone that they've carried on from family to family. It's a stone tablet. Some would liken it to being that, just like the emerald tablets of Thoth, right? These great things that only some can read. Well, the Uchiha, with their eye ability, have the ability to read the message of these tablets that foretell of a great coming time where all would be put under the great dream and how to do so, how to put these people onto the great dream. Little do we know that there are many different eyes that the Sharingan goes through. So when you're reading it in one way, it reads a certain way. When you're reading it with the higher ascended eye, it reads it in another way. And once you read it all the way through, you realize that somebody who wrote this, who was just at a certain level of consciousness, and that was their way of perceiving reality in that way. And so we are trying to do here is we're trying to perceive reality in a way where I can truly understand what is being said, told, read, listened to, that I'm constantly being programmed. I mean, it's not like some big bad spooky woo-woo thing. It's that we're constantly being programmed with sign symbols through movies, television, film, anime, and stories of all kind through all times. And that with the right training, with the right inspiration, we can look into the darkness and perceive light. And that light we're perceiving is our very own. And so through here, through Magus and the media, that is what we're doing. We're trying to perceive our own light and move forward in a way where once it's happening and once we perceive it, those stories, those symbols, those unconscious archetypes are being told through these stories, that we can smile a little bit and understand a little bit more about it. You know what else it does? It also helps us understand what is crap. What Disney is putting out at this time is crap, and that it is very uncreative, because it seems that Hollywood is tended towards being in the uncreative zones. So hopefully one day it'll come back to being creative, which it might not. And so that is why we here at Magus in the Media, we as in me, I'm going to bring you the stories that I love, the ones that I feel like have meaning. I truly feel that in anime today, it is giving us an original story that tells a deep archetypical structure and archetypical journey of the soul. And in those things, I think certain comic books have also done that. Few and far between nowadays, but it's still doing it in things like the Department of Truth, telling us that all reality is but a story told. And if we can get enough people to convince and tell them that the story and get them to believe it, reality conforms to that. Magic, the science and art of causing change and conformity to one's will and one's reality. So, to end this, as we move on, I will be doing more live streams like this. We will be continuing our Lost Keys of Freemasonry. What I need you to do to continue this with me is to like, share, and subscribe as we walk the journey together. And in walking this journey together, we can truly find out who we are and why we are here. Thank you.